Well, welcome back, everyone, to this week's edition of The Great Outside here in Devil's Lake. We've got professional fisherman Johnny Candle with us. Thanks for joining us today, Johnny. How are
Hey,
you?
pleasure to be here. I'm doing really well because there's a lot less ice on Devil's Lake today than there was 2 or 3 days ago, and won't be long now. We'll be able to have a boat out there and drive around and catch a few fish closer to home.
Absolutely. No, I've heard a few people have been stepping out and getting on the shoreline and doing a little bit, but I know it's a little early. But I heard Creel Bay probably in the next few days might be getting a little bit more ice free, so that's always a good sign of spring and summer to come.
It is. It is. A lot of geese around. The ducks are flying, and as you know, Tanner, it's been a long winter with a lot of stuff going on. Right. The weather was not all that great this winter, and then the health situation across the country has everybody up on end, and it's just nice to see something happen on schedule and look normal. Right. It's the first week of May. The ice is melting. The birds are flying. The fish will be biting soon, and I just think it's going to help the whole country get our head back on straight, right? We need a break from all the madness. We need to be able to get out there and enjoy ourselves and forget about all the junk that's going on in the world right now.
Oh, absolutely. I was out on Saturday and I spent a little bit of time out in the water and wet a line for a little bit and basically turned my phone off. I tell you, those 6, 7 hours of no phone distraction of any media or anything like that was just a nice reset. So I think you're exactly right about getting your head on straight when we are able to get out in the water and maybe take a little break from everything else that's going on. And
Exactly.
I'm sure you're getting your boat ready this year too. Did you get a different boat again?
Yeah, I did. I did. I've got everything's rigged and ready to go. It's in the garage. It hasn't been started yet. Obviously, there's nowhere to put it in the water. But yeah, I'm fired up, man. I've got loaded up with all the newest technology from Humminbird and Minn Kota. It's an incredible Lund fiberglass boat, 21 footer. Can't wait to get some guide clients in the boat and get out there and start catching some fish. But long way coming before that, right?
Oh,
Usually
absolutely.
takes 2 or 3 days of shakedown before you know everything is working perfectly. You've been around the block enough to know that even though all the wires look like they're connected to the right stuff, it doesn't always work out that way. So you get out there and hit a switch or a button and things don't work quite right. And I don't feel comfortable paying customers till I know my equipment's 100% where it needs to be. So there's still a little work ahead, but it's all part of the game, and it's rather enjoyable trying to figure some of that stuff out. So I'm excited to get going.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's definitely nice to get the boat in the water a couple times before you kind of get going with the summer and just to make sure all the kinks are worked out of it and you're comfortable with it. And I'm sure the customers really appreciate that when they know when they show up to the boat ramp that first day or first outing that everything's
Right,
ready to rock and
right,
roll at full steam ahead.
right. Well, how'd you like to get in an airplane and have the pilot go, "Oh crap,"
Yeah, that
right?
would
I
make
mean,
me panic.
it's not much different. So people don't pay to get in something that's not working properly. So a lot of maintenance goes into the guide business. I think that's the stuff, Tanner, people don't see when they hire a guide to go fishing or even hunting for that matter. They see you pick them up in the morning after breakfast and you go out to the lake or the field and you get right after it, right? You get to the fishing spot, you hand them a rod and a reel, or you get to the hunting spot and you set the decoys out and hide in the blind. They don't see the hours of preparation, the scouting, the days that I run a guide trip and it doesn't end as well as I'd like. So I take those customers home and go right back out on the water to try to find a different fishing spot for my next guide client the next morning. They think we just get up and sniff the air and drive right to a fishing spot. Well, heck no, man. There's hours and hours and hours of preparation and maintenance and cleanup at the end of the day and getting ready for the next day. And a 7 or 8 hour fishing trip is usually about a 10 or 12 hour day for the guide involved. And I just, like I said, I don't think people understand that all the time. If they did, they would realize why it costs so much to hire a fishing guide. You're not just paying for a day in the boat. You're paying for 20, 30, 40 years of fishing knowledge and experience and all that stuff. So, but yeah, it's something you got to love to do, and I can't wait to get after it again.
Yeah, but like you said, there is a lot of it behind the scenes that people don't see. And following along with you on social media, I see a lot of your posts about, I think the other day you had a bunch of rods lined up that
Yep.
you were getting ready for spring and like just all that stuff with making sure the line's good and you've got everything organized. So when you do get into a good bite that you're ready to, if you break off, ready to tie up quick and all that stuff. So that, no, there is a lot more, I think, than people realize that goes into being a fishing guide. So I definitely give you guys a lot of kudos for being able to grind it day in and day out like that and still put on a great face and enjoy it through the thick and thin.
Yeah, you got to love it. Got to love it.
And so you kind of came from, I would say, a little bit of humble beginnings down. Where was it? Ohio is where you originate from?
Yep. Born and raised in a really, really small town in northeast Ohio, about 60 miles southeast of Cleveland, Ohio. Um, we had a traffic light in the center of town that had a flashing red light on one side and a flashing yellow light on the other. If you blinked, you would have missed the whole town. One corner had a post office. The other corner had a convenience store, so a gas station and a little grocery store. But it's nothing like what a C store is nowadays. This was literally an old house that was converted into a gas station and a grocery store. On the other corner was the, I guess you would call it the town hall, for lack of a better word. I think I only walked through the doors of that building once in my whole life because they boarded it up and shut it down. And the other corner had the largest house in the area. Some rich guy from the 1800s built it. And that was the whole place. It was called Diamond, Ohio. And that was it. I mean, it was nothing. It was 25 miles to the closest grocery store that was an actual grocery store from the house I grew up in as a kid. So yeah, we lived in the sticks, but my dad loved to fish. As I got older, we expanded our fishing horizons from the smaller inland lakes to Lake Erie. And in 1988, I'm sorry, my father started a charter boat service on Lake Erie. And man, that's what got me hooked, Tanner. Once I started getting paid to go fishing, it was a fun thing to do before that. But man, when I found out you could make a few bucks by taking people fishing, it was game over. I knew what I was going to do the rest of my life.
Oh, absolutely. No, that just definitely changes it. And it kind of, I feel like it feels fire to it when you get to still go fishing, get paid to do it, but you love it. It's not like it's a job or anything. You enjoy doing it every day. And no, that's kind of amazing to hear that story from Ohio. And if I'm mistaken, I believe you had a photo or a video on Facebook the other day. Was that one of the first guide boats that you had ever?
That was the charter boat that my father bought brand new in 1988. He passed away this last December and left the boat to me. And obviously it just doesn't fit in with what goes on in the upper Midwest. I didn't need it growing flowers out of it anymore. So it was time for it to move on. And four young men from the area here, they're just out of college. Actually, I taught them in my college fishing class a couple years ago at Lake Region State College. They came to me and said, hey, we wouldn't mind trying to fix that thing up and bringing back to life. So I don't want to say gave it away, but I pretty much gave it away. I didn't charge them a whole lot of money for it.
Yep.
And Tanner, it really hurt a little bit when that boat pulled out of the driveway. You know what I mean? That was over 30 years ago when I jumped in that boat with my dad for the first time and built a business together and learned a lot about a fishing business and learned a lot about each other. We spent hours and hours and hours together in that boat. And it's the end of one chapter, but the beginning of a whole new book for those young men. And hopefully they can bring her back to life and get her out on the lake and have some great memories themselves in that boat. But yeah, it was a neat boat, a big boat, giant, completely different fishing the Great Lakes than it is fishing here in Devil's Lake. But man, learned a lot of stuff along the way.
Oh, absolutely. No, and I'm sure there's a lot of sentimental value in that. And I just want to say I'm very sorry again about your dad this last year. That's, as you've kind of learned about me a little bit too, my dad's one of my best friends and we do a lot of the outdoor stuff together, whether it's hunting and fishing. So I can see how, over 30 years, there's a lot of memories that get built up in whether it's a particular boat or, sitting in a hunting blind, stuff like that. And it's kind of neat that it's been able to, the tradition of it can live on and hopefully maybe down the road, they'll be able to have their families start either a business or create just family memories out of the same thing. And I think that's a really important thing in fishing and hunting and anything outdoors. A lot of the traditions that get passed on and keep the life going with that is just passing on, whether it's, a family tradition that you do, or a family trip or an outing and things like that. So I think that's really wonderful that it's going to be able to be passed on and brought back to life again.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, so you started in Ohio, and how many years did you exactly guide there?
Well, I started at age 17. I moved to North Dakota in 1996 in the fall. So that's what, 9 years that I worked on my dad's charter boat. I worked on other Lake Erie charter boat captains' boats. I got my own captain's license, which made it legal for me to run the boat by myself when I was 20. Uh, and then I started running dad's boat. I bought my own boat, started running my own guide trips. I branched out a little bit, fished a little bit Lake Ontario, Lake Michigan, which weren't all that far from Ohio. People think I was some kind of journeyman, but when you go back east, the states get a lot smaller and a lot closer together. So I really wasn't driving all that far to fish other bodies of water. But in 1996, I moved out to North Dakota. I met a young lady from the Garrison area when I was traveling out this way, competing in some tournaments. We thought we fell head over heels for each other, but we were both pretty young. But moved out here, got married, got unmarried, but decided that North Dakota was a pretty cool place and I'm going to stick around. Moved from the Garrison area to Devil's Lake in the year 2000 and been here ever since.
Wow. And over the course of the last couple of weeks interviewing people, it's true. Like a lot of people always say for tourism, for relocation and economic development, that it seems like tourism is the number one driver, whether it's, you've been coming out here for 10 years doing a fishing trip and you decide, you know what, this is a great place to relocate my family to and start raising kids, good school systems, or you've been coming out here on a camping trip and things like that. So it's really neat to see that you ended up relocating out here to North Dakota from Ohio and started guiding out here and kind of creating your own new life out here. And, I was talking with Hannah Hudson last week on here, and she kind of did the same thing by moving to Fargo here a month and a half ago. So it's kind of neat to just see how tourism encapsulates that whole economic development of getting people to think about wanting to move to the state of North Dakota.
Oh yeah, I still remember, Tanner, the first time I drove to North Dakota. It would have been the second year I fished the professional. Well, it wasn't the PWT; it was the North American Walleye Anglers, which no longer in existence. But it was a major national walleye tournament circuit, and it was my second year on tour, so it would have been 1995. I drove through Minnesota, where I had fished the year before, but I'd never fished in North Dakota. And I got to about, I'm going to say just west of Jamestown, and asked myself, why on earth would anyone ever want to live here? Then I got to Bismarck and turned north to go to Lake Sakakawea. And at that time, Bismarck wasn't what it is today. It pretty much ended at Interstate 94. When you went north, there was nothing. And I got to about Wilton and said, now I definitely am confused why anybody would want to live here. Got to Lake Sakakawea, had fun fishing. Like I said, met a young lady there, got to know her fairly well, came back for a few trips. And about the third trip to Garrison, I said, you know what? Now I understand why people live here. This is absolutely incredible. You don't have anybody in your face. You don't go to the gas station and get in an argument about who got to the gas pump first. You really don't wait in line anywhere when you go shopping, even in our biggest cities, Fargo, Bismarck, right, Minot, Grand Forks. You don't really wait in line. There's always a cash register available. Even on the busiest days of the year, it's still pretty laid back. And you've got the great outdoors right out your back door, no matter where you live. Again, the biggest cities in our state, in a matter of 10 or 15 minutes, you're outside the city limits and you're fishing in the Red River, or you're fishing the Missouri River in Bismarck, or a 45-minute drive from Minot and you're on Lake Sakakawea. You look at Devil's Lake, I think we're flirting with the 10th largest city in the state of North Dakota. And 2 miles outside the city limits, you have this phenomenal walleye fishery and duck breeding factory. And so, man, if you are into the outdoors at all, Tanner, and you know this, there is nowhere better than North Dakota. to go hang out and make a home and raise a family and catch a fish, skin a deer, shoot a duck. Almost feel like that Hank Williams Jr. song, right? A country boy can survive. It's
Yep.
we do it all here, and it's just great. School shuts down the day of opening deer season, right? I mean, the teachers know no one's coming to school tomorrow. It's opening day of deer season, and no one cares. It's awesome. I can't think of a better place to live and raise a family and enjoy the outdoors. It's incredible.
I couldn't agree more with you. You know, like I like to travel and get to see other places, but you know, you go a week somewhere else and it's always so relaxing to come back to Devil's Lake and just have that, like, okay, it's good to be home. Like you said, you're not crowded. You know, a lot of things people ask too, especially at sports shows, I think, well, Devil's Lake's, you know, seems like it's a very popular lake. It's going to be busy. And, you know, for the most part, it's such a big body of water, any body of water in North Dakota that has a lot of open area. You don't run into a lot of people. You maybe ice fishing, you do a little more, but there is so much water and country to cover out there that for the most part, you've got yourself a relaxing time on the water. And, you know, that there's a lot of parts of the lake that hold fish almost year round. So you get to just learn it on different tactics and how to fish particular areas. But for the most part, we're pretty fortunate and spoiled that we aren't too overly crowded.
Oh yeah, you'll put your boat in on a busy weekend here, and Tanner, you see it a lot. Graham's Island State Park, for example, you put your boat in and there's 200 trailers in the parking lot, and you're thinking, oh man, I'm not going to get to my best spot today. And you come around the corner to your best spot, you're looking to the left and to the right, you're going, why are there no boats on my best spot? Well, that's because there's that many best spots. I don't fish in a crowd. If more than 3 boats or 4 boats show up in an area, I look at my guide clients and say, hey, is this what you came here for? Not really. I said, good. Let's drive down the lake another mile or half a mile, or go around this corner into another bay, and you can catch fish every day without anybody else in your face. And that makes it a lot of fun. It gives you that peaceful feeling, that serene feeling, almost like going way north into Canada, but yet you're minutes from civilization. So it's the best of both worlds here.
It really is. You know, I was up in, I want to say it was Loch Sewell this summer up on Sioux Lookout. And like you said, it was a kind of almost, it wasn't quite a fly and you could drive, and then you had to take like a charter, probably 40 miles up on the lake to the outpost camp where you're at. And it was, I mean, it's just like Devil's Lake. It's pretty much wilderness, you know, serene, quiet, peaceful. But there, obviously, you don't have the services of phone service and that kind of stuff, where we're lucky that we can get back to the state park or the resort or the campground and you have phone service, or you're within a 10-minute drive to town to go back and get more tackle and bait and groceries and stuff like that. So we're really lucky up here.
Yeah, it's a great place. Great place.
I know you had touched on a little bit ago there. You do a little teaching at Lake Region State College for fishing class.
I do.
And I think that's something I really thought was really neat this last couple of years, just hearing about it, especially for kids that, you know, want to further their continuing education, but also still be able to, versus going to like a University of Minnesota or, you know, an NDSU right away, where you can still go get your higher ed, but you also still can take advantage of having this out your back door when class is done. And I know you've been able to help some people that have probably never been on the lake or on the ice before get out and take in something that we take for granted up here.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, Tanner. It's been 10 years now since I taught my first ice fishing class at Lake Region State College. That's how it started out. And then I branched off and offered open water fishing as well. And I've approached it from many different angles. We've done it some years where every day we go out on the ice for 2 hours or so. We were doing it in the boat, where when the class was small, I'd just throw them all in one boat. Every day we'd meet at 4 o'clock and fish till 6 or 7. They have to have 15 hours on the water. Well, 15 hours of learning instruction. So what I've done now is we do it all in 1 week. We'll meet on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday for a couple hours each night. We talk about knot tying. We talk about fish location, fish identification, all those things. In the summertime, I bring the truck and boat in, and they actually learn how to back a trailer through a set of orange cones in the parking lot, because that's part of fishing as well. So we get all that out of the way in a couple days in the classroom. And then we take a Saturday and start at 7 o'clock in the morning. I'll get a couple buddies, a couple other guides, myself, and we'll load the kids up, and nothing is rigged in the boat. That's the rule. I tell all the guides, all the teachers, they learned how to tie knots. They learned what lures are. They're going to pick what they want to fish with, and they're going to tie it on the rods and reels, and we're going to go fishing. So we start the morning with them rigging the rods and reels. We get to the lake. They back the truck and boat down the ramp. We get out on the water. We fish all day, come back in, go to the fish cleaning station where they're taught how to clean a fish. So they fillet all the fish up. Sometimes they do really, really well. Other times it looks more like potato chips than it does fish fillets. We're going to have to watch it with that new North Dakota rule about one fillet per fish or whatever. But then we usually, if the weather is suitable, we'll either go back to the college or come out to my house, and I fire up the deep fryer, and we get the fish breading out, and we get some fried potatoes out and some baked beans, and we have a shore lunch. And they cook the fish themselves. If there's bones in the fillets, well, that's their fault because they cleaned them. But we go through the whole thing from start to finish. And what a cool experience, right? Now, Tanner, you and I grew up doing that. So it wasn't unusual at my house as a kid to go fish, come home and eat fish for dinner. But you're absolutely right. Some of these kids have never touched a fishing rod. They've never been in a boat. They've never held a fish. Some of them are pretty good anglers. I think it's either 7 or 8 of my students are now fishing guides on Devil's Lake, and you and I can name them all if we try. It's Tanner, and Tanner that all work for Perch Patrol. Reslock fished with me. Garrett Bonham was in my class. There's a bunch of them that have all taken my classes at the college and are now guides full time. So those kids had it dialed in. But I've had foreign exchange students from Germany. I had a girl from Japan that had never caught a fish, never been in a boat, never touched a fishing rod. And they got that experience from start to finish, right? Get ready to fish, go fish, clean a fish, cook a fish, eat a fish. I lose track of those kids as they move back home or on to other parts of their life. But if just one of those kids, when they have kids, decides, hey, that was fun, I want to teach that skill set to my children, then I think it's well worth my effort to teach the class. We have a riot with it. It fills up every year. It's one of the first classes that's full because I only accept 10 students. And I get excited about it. It's every year. I can't wait to do it. There's always some frustration, right? Obviously, when you're taking newbies out fishing, I have some pretty wicked backlashes to untangle at times and that kind of thing. But you know what, Tanner? Somebody took the time to teach you to fish. Someone took the time to teach me to fish. Some of these kids don't have that person to teach them to fish. And I'm more than willing and more than happy to make sure they learn it the right way. And it's just a fun time. It's a good program.
Oh, absolutely. And it's almost more like a life skills class than it is just fishing from learning all that. I mean, there's a lot of people, that are great fishermen, but sometimes aren't the most confident in backing a boat in and driving a boat or things like that. And I'm sure it's not only rewarding for them, but rewarding for you when you see from start to finish, from scratch to actually learning the proper rigs to tie up and landing that fish and then being able to have that meal with it. And, like you said, there's a lot of people that don't have that opportunity to have that tradition passed on. And we were talking last week, there's a lot of people that have that barrier to entry where it's not so much that they're, against the fishing or the hunting, but they just don't have that person to guide them to say, this is, step one to getting into the outdoors and learning how to, you need to just start from shore and grab a fishing rod and here's some of your basic jigs and knots to tie and here's some lures that'll work. And, just that progression to guide that person along the way is just, I think, very crucial to have.
Right. Exactly. Especially in a community like ours, Tanner. You look at Devil's Lake, the college is 4 miles, maybe 5 miles from water, and actually 4 or 5 miles from some of the best shore fishing in Devil's Lake. We've got a handicap accessible fishing pier, for goodness sake, right at the north end of Creel Bay that you can go there and catch limits of fish many, many times throughout the summer. I see a lot of kids from the school putting rods and reels in the back seat of their boats or trucks and driving there to fish after class. And, even the kids that I get in class, I see them taking other kids fishing. So that's kind of cool too. And I love watching that. I was that kid when I was little. I was always on my bike with a rod in one hand and a basket of tackle in the other. And trying to figure out how am I going to get these 6 or 8 bluegills back home that I have on a stringer while I pedal this bike down the road. I don't know how many times I got home and there's no scales left on the fish because I was dragging them behind the bicycle to get back home. And I just couldn't imagine a world where there aren't kids that do that. And so many more distractions nowadays. Look at what we're doing right now, right? We're talking back and forth on a computer, seeing each other visually. When I was a youngster, it was a big deal just to make a phone call. So we didn't have the distractions. So it's even more important now to be a mentor to these young kids, to show them that there is more to life than clicking a mouse or touching a screen on a phone, or Skyping or Zooming or whatever you're Facebooking or FaceTiming or all this stuff. I get it. It's fun to stay connected. I love chatting with my friends too, but we met at the pond. 3 buddies would come from 3 different directions on a bike and meet at Old Man Johnson's farm pond and fish for the day. So I just think it's important to keep that tradition alive and keep these kids focused on outdoor activities and show them that there is more to the world than electronic gadgetry. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. And I think there's something to say about being out in fresh air too, that, you get tired probably sitting at a computer screen all day, but when you're out, whether it's yard work or sitting on a boat all day, and even if you're not doing a lot and you're trolling and you're not having to man a lot of rods and things like that, fresh air and sunshine will wipe a person out. And I swear you get some of the best sleep after days on the water, days in the field. And,
For sure.
Speaking of the token of introducing the kids into the outdoors and fishing, I know you're a member of the MPAA, and if I'm not mistaken, that's a pretty good organization that is involved with making sure that professional aspect of angling and keeping the tradition alive is one of their main purposes.
Oh yeah, we have the National Professional Anglers Association, the NPAA, started. It's been over 20 years ago now, and I was a founding member. I was one of the first original 100 members of the organization, and from the very beginning, we made youth important. And I want to say it's pretty close to 6 or 7 years ago now, we started I want to call it a spin-off organization of the NPAA called the Future Anglers Foundation. We use that as a fundraising wing and as a funding organization for people that want to put on events for youth. We supply rods and reels and tackle packages, some fishing, some cash grants for fishing projects, some T-shirts to give away to the kids if you have some pros there and they want to get autographs. Just a great thing to do. And boy, if anybody's out there putting on some youth events, please reach out to myself if you want to. You can find me all over the internet. Just Google Johnnie Candle and my contact information pops right up. But I'll help you get in touch with the NPAA and make sure that we can get you some help on putting on some of these youth events.
Which is wonderful. I know we have quite a few of those after some of our tournaments in Devil's Lake in the summer, where after weigh-ins, there'll be 50 kids that come to a little clinic put on where they learn fishing basics. And at the end of the day, they walk away with a rod and reel. And I think it's kind of a really neat thing to not only entice them to come along and take it all in, but also have that, again, another barrier that's kind of knocked down to give them that entry into fishing.
Exactly.
And I want to say in that same aspect, you're also involved with the Lake Region Anglers in Devil's Lake, which is our community fishing organization. And I think there's a lot of people that are probably listening that, don't maybe know everything that the Lake Region Anglers do. And I thought maybe now would be a great time to maybe have a little discussion on, what all they involved with, whether it's the community fish fry and the docks that get put in the summer and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the Lake Region Anglers started sometime in the 70s, Tanner, long before I was even here. I got involved probably the early 2000s. I started going to the meetings just to sit and listen. I was a member, joined. It's not very expensive, $20 to be a member for a year. And then one day I missed a meeting and I came back to the next meeting and found out that I was the president, which I still don't understand how that works, but I've been the president for 7 years now, I think. And I've already told the group that when this term is up, it's time to find some new blood. I'm a firm believer that when you have one president for too long, an organization starts to get stale, and we need another fresh set of eyes in there. I'll still serve on the board. I'll still come to all the meetings, and I'll still be involved because it's an incredible organization. But, let's see. Some of the stuff we're involved in, we help the city and the state maintain all the boat access points and fish cleaning facilities across the lake region. We're not 100% responsible, but not one group is. That's kind of how it works here. The Chamber of Commerce, the city, the state, and the lake region anglers all chip in financially, manpower. It's our club that puts in and takes out, I would say, 85% of the docks.
That's
Some of
all
them
right.
are, yeah, some of them are too big for us to do. We need heavier equipment, but I'd say 85% of the docks we put in and take out. We've had guys roll their sleeves up and build shore fishing stations. We've had guys rip grinders out of cleaning stations and fix the plumbing. So we do all that kind of handyman stuff as well. We host several tournaments or outings, however you want to call them, across the lake region every year. Those are kind of up in the air for this coming summer. We're going to do all we can to try to have a couple, but we're not certain how many that will be at this point. But I think we have 5. We have a couple. We have a couple mixed species tournaments. We have a northern and pike tournament in the spring. We have another northern/pike derby later in the summer. We have the Devil's Lake Open, which is right before the Devil's Lake Chamber tournament every year. That is only walleye. We have an adult child tournament every year, and we have what we call our Walleye Widows tournament every year, which is a mixed couples tournament. But it's really not, because the men are just there to be there. We never say a man's name. None of the prize money is given to a man. It's all about the ladies. It's their day to get out on the water with their significant other or a male member of their family or friend and enjoy a day on the water. So we do those tournaments as well. We're part of the Angler Young Angler tournament that we co-host with the FM Walleyes group in Fargo-Moorhead every year in July. So that's a big deal for us. Let's see, I'm trying to think what else we do. We lobby at the state level when fishing rules and regulations may or may not be going the way we want them to go for our lake. We've been involved fighting high and low water issues here in the lake region. So yeah, that's just, I'm sure I'm missing some of the stuff, Tanner, that we do, because it's really, really hard without a list to keep it.
Yeah.
We provide some sponsorships or scholarships, I would say, for youth that attend. I think it's called Lure 'em for Life at the Bible camp every year. There's a week-long fishing camp for kids. And I think last year we funded 4 students to go to that, or 4 youth to go to that summer fishing camp as well. So yeah, we're trying to stay as busy as we can, try to stay involved. And if you fish Devil's Lake very often, I don't care if you live here or not, but if you fish here very often, it sure would be nice to show some support to the lake area and join the Lake Region Anglers Association. You can go to lakeregionanglers.com and sign up right online. We have a PayPal set up. It's $20. And again, to go for all the maintenance of these boat ramps and fish cleaning stations and all that kind of stuff, what's $20, right? You don't pay to use a boat ramp when you come here. They're all free.
That's the one thing, attending a lot of these meetings that I never really put into perspective until I started traveling more out of state to different lakes to fish, that, we have, I want to say it's 7 or 8 boat ramps here that are free to use for the public. And, you had mentioned a lot of times in your travels and tournament life and everything, that a lot of boat ramps you go to, you got to pay $5, $10, $15 to launch every time there. And so we're pretty lucky that, whether you're a local or you're traveling in from out of state, that you can pull up to a boat ramp, drop your boat in, go fish for 8 hours, come back up, use the fish cleaning station right there, and head back to your hotel for the night. And you didn't have to pay for any of those facilities. So it definitely, I recommend it for anyone listening that does fish here a lot, that the $20 is well spent and well worth it.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. And then the other thing, I don't know if you mentioned it too, we do a community fish fry in Devil's Lake.
Oh, that's right. The fish fry every year.
And I know
How
a lot
could
of
I forget that?
the good and the bad of it, but a lot of people that come to our tournaments, they always wonder what happens to all these fish that get weighed in at the end of the day. And, it's one of those things, we have, 7,500 people in Devil's Lake, and I'm sure there's a good portion of that don't ever get to experience fresh walleye. And so what happens with a lot of the fish that we end up having from the kill tournaments, they end up getting donated to the Lake Region Anglers, and you guys help in conjunction with the Tourism and Chamber of Commerce to put on a community fish fry that's a free will donation. And we must serve between 500 to 700 people in August when they come through, and a big corn feed as well. And I know that money gets put back into you guys to help with,
Mhm.
more maintenance and shore fishing piers and stuff like that. So I think it's a wonderful cause, and just kind of another little appreciation where a lot of people in Devil's Lake that don't fish and never have the opportunity to try it, that can come out and have a plate of walleye.
Yeah, it's a fun night. We usually start with the fryers at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon and dunk our first fish fillet about 3. And I'm usually not back home at my house till 10 or 10:30 at night after we clean everything up. But I think the most we ever fed, Tanner, was just over 800 one year. And again, when you see all those smiling faces walking out, that it's the only meal of what I would call fresh fish that they eat all summer long or all year long. And they start telling you stories about, well, I remember when my husband used to fish, or when my son lived here, he would bring me fish, or this and that. And I always try to get out and mingle with the people in between cooking batches of fish just to hear those stories. And again, it all goes back to community. And Devil's Lake is definitely a community. We're a city, we're a county seat. We have all the business stuff that happens, but we're small enough that that sense of community is still here. And I think even the tourists feel that when they come here, right? You go to
Hmm.
Mr. and Mrs. J's, or you go to the Cedar Inn for breakfast, and if you go there 2 days in a row, they'll call you by name when you sit down to eat. And you don't see that in other places, right? So it's kind of refreshing to have that sense of community when you call a town home.
It really does. It makes you feel warm and welcome. And like when I go anywhere, if that happens, it always makes, someone comes to Mr. and Mrs. J's and sits down for breakfast, and they start making this a regular trip every 6 months or every year. I bet you 99% of the time they're going to be apt to visit that exact place for breakfast the next time they come into town because of how they
Exactly.
were treated.
Exactly.
Yeah. So no, and that was kind of a good wrap up of everything you've been involved with in Devil's Lake, and I kind of want to take a little bit of another dive off in a different direction. I know you're very heavily involved in the tournament life too, and I kind of wanted to get a take on what life on the road with the tournament field is like for a guy like you.
So where do you start, Tanner? Yeah, I started tournament fishing at age 24 as a professional on one of the highest pro level tours in the country at the time. I never fished a bar tournament. I never fished a local fun tournament. I never fished a fishing club tournament in my life. I said, I'm 24 years old. I got a college degree. I'm 6'1" and feel like I'm bulletproof. So what the heck? I'm going to do this. And I found out right away that I wasn't ready to do this. I had a truck and a boat that, if you added them together, might have been worth about $5,000. And even back then, that wasn't enough, right? I had a 40-horse motor on an 18-foot Lund boat. Didn't even have a flat floor. It was just a hollow shell with wooden bench seats, and I had to build my own live well. I didn't have a casting deck, but I traveled the country and learned a lot that first year. Came back the second year out and made the national championship tournament. And back then they only took 35 guys. So here I am standing at the national championship tournament at age 25. Gary Roach is on one side of me. Mike McClelland is on the other side of me. Parsons and Cavias, Ted Talks. I mean, these are like legends in the walleye fishing world, and I'm right there with them as an equal. Uh, Over the years, I've had a lot of bumps and bruises. I've learned a lot. I've had a lot of good years and a lot of bad. But man, what a better way to learn than just jump in with both feet. I wouldn't recommend doing that to anyone now. It costs way too much. You have too much to risk. But yeah, it's been interesting. I've stayed in some really, really nice hotels along the way. I've stayed in some hotels where at 3 o'clock in the morning you get up and sleep in your truck and you check out the next morning because you rented a place that you probably shouldn't have. I've had some really great meals. I've had some really bad meals. You can only imagine some of the stuff that has happened. And I think this is my 27th year of tournament fishing now. You can only imagine some of the things that I've ran into on the road over the years.
Oh my gosh, I could only imagine. I'm sure there's been a lot of great stories and not so great stories, and you could probably have a book written on all of that kind of stuff. And I
That's
know.
not a bad idea.
Hey, we got some time right now.
That's for sure. But no, Tanner, I wouldn't trade it for anything. One of the things that it really, really helps with is, again, coming back to Devil's Lake, we'll kind of tie this full circle, is traveling the country and see things that work in other communities. and bringing them back to people like yourself and Susie at that, and Paula at the chamber, that say, hey, look, I've been to this place 3 or 4 times and they're the only place in the country that's doing something and it's really working for them. Why don't we try that? And we have tried some of it, going to other places and seeing things that don't work, right? Things that fail miserably. They're trying to do this, they're trying to do that, and bringing that back and saying, hey, whatever we do, don't do this, because it's horrible when you have to go through this procedure to use a boat ramp or do this to clean a fish. Building the Four Seasons fish cleaning station and being able to say, look, I've traveled coast to coast, literally fishing across this country, and have never seen another indoor fish cleaning station. Tanner, we were the first. You don't want to know how many are out there now, right? They're everywhere.
Yep.
But no one had one till Devil's Lake had one. And that's kind of fun, bringing those experiences from traveling all around the country back home to Devil's Lake. Again, boat ramps, right? You go to the Detroit River in Detroit, Michigan, where they're catching walleyes, 8, 9, 10 pounders. They have hundreds and hundreds of trucks in the parking lot, and they charge $15 to use the city park to launch your boat. And it's like, hey, I get it. They need funding, but man, if we can do it for free, the longer we can do it, the more attractive we're going to be. So I wouldn't give it up for anything. The competition is fun. Being away from home sometimes gets to be a grind. I'll go on stretches, as you know, sometimes I'm gone 20, 30 days in a row, 2 tournaments that are too close to each other to drive home and drive back, or you get some other promotional opportunity in between the tournaments. That kind of gets old after a while. So many days in a row in a hotel room. Finally, you just say, hey, I'd like to sleep in my own bed. But all in all, for the last quarter of a century, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I've got to fish some of the most incredible fisheries on earth. I've caught some giant walleyes. I've met some really, really great people. And actually, if it wasn't for the tournament game, I wouldn't be living in North Dakota today anyway. So it's a really, really big part of what I do, who I am, and I can't wait to hopefully get out there and compete this summer somewhere. Right now, it's all up in the air, but I'm sure somebody's going to figure out a way to have a couple tournaments this summer, and I'll be involved with as many of them as I possibly can be.
And we'll be watching you from the background wherever we can and cheering you on with that. It's
well, hopefully I give you something to cheer for.
Hey, but that's fishing.
It sure is. It sure is.
So, and one more thing I wanted to kind of touch on here as we kind of get close to wrapping up is just in the guiding life, if you had anything, over the last so many years of guiding that's been a unique story, something funny or something memorable that's happened that really you can look back and sticks out in your memory bank.
This is PG, right?
It is. Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. You see it all, Tanner. I've seen things from, let's see, I had a grandfather, this was back in the Lake Erie days, that had a little issue with the wave action and didn't feel so well, and decided that his lunch needed to be deposited somewhere else. And when he turned around, he no longer had teeth. That was kind of it wouldn't have been funny if he wouldn't have laughed about it. But here's this grandpa with they were little kids, 7, 8 years old probably. And he gets rid of his food over the side and turns around, and he had no teeth. And at the end of the day, he gave myself a handshake and a hug. And he said, this day cost me about $1,200 for a new set of dentures, and I'd pay twice that much to do it again. So those are great memories. You get people in your boat that you just can't forget for anything. I had a gentleman several years back here in Devil's Lake that he had to have a photographic memory. That's the best way I could say it. If you named a famous poem, he could recite it word for word, right? Casey at the Bat, or I just go down the list, right? All these Edgar Allan Poe poems and Hemingway stories. And it's like the guy memorized these poems, and it was better than having a Kindle in your boat that day, because you just said, hey, Charlie, we need a new story. And he'd just say, oh, the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. And he'd just rattle it off like it was nothing, like he was reading you his home address. That guy was, his mind was amazing. He was 78 or 79 years old when I had him in my boat. I don't think he could remember what he ate for breakfast that day, but he could rattle off all these poems over and over and over all day long. That guy sticks in my head, and I'll never forget him. Uh, but I think the biggest part for me, Tanner, are the events where a father and a son, or a mother and a daughter, or a grandfather and son and grandson are in the boat together, and they make some memories that jump right out at you. I'm sure you saw the article that the Tourism Bureau did not too long ago. They asked about some of these memories, and this one was just from last summer. I had a grandfather, his son, and his two sons. So there were four of them in the boat, and a little 6-year-old boy catches a northern pike first thing in the morning, and he gets pretty excited, and it's the first northern pike he's ever caught ever, right? So it's a big deal, and
Yep.
you and I are going, well, it's just another pike, kid, get used to it. It's not that exciting, right? And then he catches a 16-inch walleye or so, which isn't a big fish, right? But it's a eater, nice walleye, and he's jumping up and down, and Dad, my first walleye, my first walleye. And yeah, it's pretty cool. We take a picture, and they go around. We're bobber fishing, so Dad catches a couple and Grandpa catches a couple, and this kid finally catches one. It's probably 19 inches long, and to him, I'm sure it looked like it was 30 pounds, right? It's a nice 2.5-pound fish, and he reels it in, and we net it and take it out of the net, hold it up for a picture, put it in the live well, and he turns around and hugs his dad and says, "This is the best day of my life." And how do you not feel your heartstrings get tugged when you're in a boat with a grandfather and a dad and a kid, and he says, "This is the best day of my life"? Now, granted, he's 6 years old. He's going to have other days that are better than that. But that just says it all. That's actually why I guide, that it's days like that. I don't want to say I don't do it for the money, because obviously I have to stay alive, but you really don't. There's a lot of things, Tanner, I can do that would pay a lot better than guiding. It's not a way to get rich. You live in a modest home. You drive modest vehicles. You don't live over exuberantly.
Yep.
But man, when you hear something like that once or twice a year, or you see a person catch the biggest fish of their life, or they're on their honeymoon, enjoying each other's company, fishing together, and sharing with you their hopes and dreams and all that kind of stuff, it's a pretty big deal to me to be involved with so many people's lives on so many levels. Again, funny stories. Yeah, I had some retired Catholic priests in my boat once that you would have never known were Catholic priests. And when I asked them about it, they said, "Don't you understand what the word retired means?" So, I mean, I can go on and on and on about all the stories that, the certain specifics, someone losing something in the lake. I've had people fall out of the boat before, people get stuck with hooks. All those kind of things are memorable. But like I said, all in all, it's just being able to share a passion with other people, being part of their lives. You spend 8 hours in a day with some people, and then maybe do that 2 or 3 days in a row. You get to learn a lot about complete strangers. It's amazing how people open up, what they share with you. It's amazing what I share with them. Some days I'm like, I can't believe I'm talking about this. I don't know these people. Why am I sharing these stories? But you create an instant bond when you're on the water with each other, and I think they appreciate that too, because they keep coming back. If they didn't come back, then you know that you didn't do it right. But I probably have 70% repeat business every year. So that tells me they enjoy getting to know each other and sharing those moments on the water together.
Oh, absolutely. And, that's one of those things, is being a part of those memories. And I look back on some of the things my dad and I have done over the last 5-10 years, on whether it's a pheasant hunt or, like the last couple of years, elk hunting. And the same guide we keep going back to, we stay in touch. You spend, like you say, 3-4 days together. You learn a lot about each other, and you come in as clients, you leave as friends. And, it's one of those things that you'll always cherish and look back on. And for you to be a part of something like that, the facilitator of it, it's even better. And I assume it's got to be very rewarding.
It is. I've said it often, and it's too late in my career now to start writing it down, so I'm not going to write it down. But if I could give any advice to a new guide, is to keep a notebook and keep track of how many people say, "That's the first walleye I've ever caught," or whatever fish you're fishing for. "That's the biggest I've ever caught." "That's the best fishing day I've ever had." I would love to have a list of all those, and then making notes of all the cool stuff, right? I've had people get engaged in my boat, right? Guy catches a fish, takes it out of the net, turns around, and instead of holding the fish, he's holding a ring. And I'm like, holy cow, I didn't see that coming, right? I mean, I've had all of that happen in a boat with me. So it would be neat to have a notebook and write all that down. And I wasn't joking earlier about maybe should write a book someday. I'm sure I'd miss a lot of details. Some of the things might not be as clear as they could be, but boy, quarter of a century in a boat with how many thousands of different people, you would have a book that would be one for the ages. That's for sure.
Oh, and you definitely have one reader right here. I would read that book. I'd be the first one in line to get it. I would love to hear all of that stuff.
It would be fun.
Absolutely. Well, is there anything else, Johnny, that you would like to cover before we kind of?
Well, I think we talked about a lot. If anybody wants to sit and listen to all of that, Tanner, more power to them.
We might have to have a part 2, but I think part 2 might be from done in the boat while we're fishing.
Yeah. Let's do that, Tanner. Let's instead of keep going on this one, let's talk about fishing next time. Let's get into some nitty gritty. We can talk about how to catch them, how to rig for them, what to do, where and when, and all that kind of stuff. Right now, we can't really do that. So, but yeah, I wouldn't mind taking this junk out in the boat for a day and shoot some kind of podcast from on the water. I think we could figure that technology out somehow, I think. And
absolutely, we could be mobile.
Show the people a few fish catches and what we're doing to catch them, and just show them how fast you can catch them. If we could get on a wicked bobber bite one day, Tanner, we wouldn't even have time to talk. We'd
be rod,
hook, and fish.
Done, back.
Exactly. So yeah, that would be fun to do that later this summer. I look forward to it.
I will too. We will put it on the radar, and when we can do that, we will make sure that happens.
Perfect, man.
And so anyone that wants to find any more information on Johnnie, you can visit, I believe your website is it just johnnycandle.com?
You got it, johnnycandle.com, or follow me on Facebook. I've got a pretty strong social media presence, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. If you just search for Johnnie Candle, you're going to find me. I don't have a business name. I do everything under my own name. It's easier for me to remember that way.
Perfect. Well, easier, simpler. The simpler, the better, I like to say.
Exactly.
Kind of like bobber fishing.
Yeah. Keep it simple, stupid. The KISS method.
Yeah, exactly. I like that. I like that abbreviation. Well, thanks for joining today, Johnny. And like I said, we'll continue this into a little more in-depth conversation when we can get on the boat and do a little fishing and give some people some more in-depth techniques at that time.
Sounds good, man. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome, Johnny. Have a good day.
Right. Yeah, you too.